Welcome to the Expat Woman Show. Have you ever thought about travel as a way to build your personal brand or to develop your personal growth rather? Not your personal brand. I have personal brand on my mind right now, but personal growth does lead to personal brand. But today I'm very excited to have Veerle join me all the way from the Netherlands to talk about how you can unlock your potential when you travel abroad. Something that's very dear to my heart because I absolutely love traveling abroad, and she is a travel coach. Now, she has a very fascinating and a very impressive background. So I'm going to have you really introduce yourself a little bit more and tell us about your expat journey. And I believe you were an immigrant lawyer and now you're a travel and life coach. So also, how did your expat journey lead you to where you are today and what you currently do? Go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. I'm happy to be on the show and share a little bit more about how you can unlock your potential through travel. And as you said as well, for me, traveling is one of my biggest passions. And my expat journey started a long time ago. Actually, when I was a student, I moved to Spain, and there I studied for my master's in international law. And that's also how I learned to speak Spanish, because when I moved there, I didn't speak any word at all. So it was like a really great opportunity to learn more about the language and the culture. And afterwards, I moved to Cambodia for a few months to do an internship at the Tribunal for the United Nations. And it was also a very interesting experience and very intense as well. But it really opened my horizons and made me feel very curious about what else I could explore and how I could develop myself even more. So afterwards, I actually started my corporate career in the Netherlands as an immigration lawyer. And I started helping expats with their visa processes. So people coming to the Netherlands, helping them with their visas, but afterwards also working more globally with helping people basically move wherever they were going in the world and helping coordinate those moves. But after a few years, the Netherlands felt too small for me again, and I was ready for another expat adventure. And I was traveling sometimes, but I was really like, okay, I want to move abroad again and have this more, expanding experience again. So that's when I had the opportunity to move to Australia. And I first moved to Sydney and afterwards to Melbourne. And I lived there for about 3 years, also working as an immigration lawyer and helping expats there. But then the pandemic happened, and well, as we all know, the world shut down. And since I was working with expats, all the borders closed, so no one was moving or traveling anymore. And after a while, I actually lost my job and my visa because my visa was linked to my job. And suddenly I had to leave. Within 2 weeks, I had to pack my bags and move and just leave everything behind. And I was in complete shock because I really loved my life there. I really built a new life abroad. And I even met my now husband there, having the best time of my life. And then suddenly everything was just falling apart and was taken away. So I moved back to the Netherlands because I literally had no idea where else to go. You know, the world was one big mess at that time. So I thought, okay, let me just go to a country where at least I don't need a visa and then figure out what my next step in life would be. And that's actually when I moved back, when I really experienced many challenges of living abroad. And I thought that this move would be the easiest, but it was actually the hardest for me, moving back to a country that I actually already knew and the country where I was born and raised. And I was dealing with reverse culture shock and just really having no idea what to do next in my life. I was literally at a point that I was like, I don't know what I want to do next. And I felt really lost. So I really dove deep into my personal growth and really asking myself those questions like, okay, what do I want in my life? But also, where can I really feel at home? Because this country that I knew so well didn't even feel like home. So I really started to dive deep into this inner journey, basically. And that's when I came across a program to become a certified travel coach. And something clicked in me, and I really felt like, oh, this this connects so well with my passion of travel, but also it gave me the inspiration to help other people with their challenges of living in different countries or just traveling around. You can also have a lot of challenges with that. So somehow all my own challenges and all my own journey of personal growth and finding that feeling of home and figuring out what my purpose was in life and what I wanted to do next, it led me to change my career and become certified as a travel coach. And afterwards I also got certified as a life coach. So I started to combine those two things so that I could really help people on the inner journey and the outer journey. So one part is really the practical guidance, like, okay, you want to move abroad, how does that work? What do you need to arrange? Or if you are living abroad already, for example, how can you make new friends or how can you build your career and use those skills that you already have in a new environment? But also sometimes, for example, working with people who want to travel solo for the first time or who want to design some sort of travel experience that helps them with their healing. And the other part is really the inner journey that's so linked to it. So, really looking at how can travel help you with your personal growth, or how can you use this experience of traveling or of moving somewhere new to really boost your personal growth, to build your confidence, to work on your career, to really use all the skills and all the potential that you have and take that with you into that new environment. So eventually everything came together, my own journey of traveling to many places and then helping other people with that. So that's where I'm at today. I'm currently a repat in the Netherlands, and still I even, like, for example, traveled last week to Greece. So I'm always looking to new travel opportunities, and yeah, it's just really an important part of my life.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, very powerful, and also how your move abroad for the first time to Spain, and then I think you said Cambodia. Maybe that led you wanting to be an immigration lawyer, and then how through the pandemic and a crisis, you had your aha moment. It opened your eyes, right? And I know for many people, the pandemic or any big challenge in your life sometimes leads you to the path that you were destined for, right? And maybe in some ways it unlocks your potential. Like for me, I think I really found my voice after I moved to the US, being an expat, having to figure out the challenges in the US, and it goes for any country you move to, but I think that just kind of broadens your horizons and pushes you out of your comfort zone, and then you get more comfortable with doing things you may not have done in your country of origin. And and I think also as a repat, it's like moving abroad, as you said, in a way, because you've changed, you've grown, you've unlocked your potential, and then you have to recreate yourself. Thank you also for sharing about what a travel coach does, because when I first connected with you, I think you had joined the Expat Woman membership, and I thought travel coach is someone, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I thought a travel coach is someone who helps you say, for instance, I'm going to Japan on the way back from my trip to India next month, our first trip to Japan. So I thought like a travel coach will help me figure out, like, okay, these are all the things you need to do in Japan. But is that more like a travel guide, or does a
Yeah,
travel coach also help you with your destination? Like, what's the difference? And also for our listeners, so they can also know how it differs from a travel coach, or what is that kind of coach called, or does a travel coach include that as well?
yes, no, that's a great question, because sometimes there's confusion around that part, exactly what you just
Right,
mentioned.
right.
And when it's really about specific things of like what to do and really booking activities, for example, that's really something that a travel agent would do. So that's different from a travel coach. So a travel coach is really more focused on questions like, what do you want to get out of the experience? Like, for example, when you travel to that new destination, like what you mentioned, traveling to Japan, what do you hope to get out of it? So really looking more at like a reflection point of view. And it can include like questions like, okay, if this is what I want as an outcome, what are the activities that I would like to do? But then it's more focused on like the whole approach of what do you want to get out of it as an experience and which activities are a good match with that. So it's more holistic. It's a broader approach than just looking at tips, for example. Like, okay, these are the top 10 tips on your bucket list. That's sort of more, what a travel company or agent would help you with. But if you combine it with the coaching aspect, then you can really look at, okay, I want to go to this place because I'm looking for clarity in my life, for example. I don't know what my next steps would be. How can I find insights, or what can I do in this destination to help me with those questions that I have? And then you could look at experiences like, oh, for example, a workshop or a walk in nature or whatever it is that could help you with that goal. So it's
Wow.
looking at the, like, before a trip, it could help you, but also during and afterwards, like using that reflection approach, or looking at, okay, how can you make the most out of your travels?
Makes total sense. I mean, thank you for clarifying that. And I'm so glad that I have you on the show, and that you our paths cross, because very often we just think of travel as sightseeing. I also wanted to just give a shout out to GMM. He said, seen many Americans having a hard time adapting and learning languages here in Southeast Asia over the years, which I'm sure, is part of the travel coaching space as well, because
Yeah,
I'm sure you give people guidance. You might not teach them the languages, but I'm sure you provide them with the language. Yeah. So my next question is, uh, because we've had some discussions before you came on the show, and I know that as a travel coach, you can enhance problem solving and decision making skills. So I'm curious to hear how do you, and you've touched upon it briefly, but if you could share more of a response to this question.
sure. Yes, when you travel, you really experience new environments and new experiences and surroundings, and that can often also come with challenges and obstacles, just what was just mentioned in the comments. Like a different language, for example, is one of those obstacles that you come across. But when you travel, you create this fresh perspective to find solutions and to figure it out, especially because you are in a new environment. So it's different than when you are in your usual bubble at home, and you think about things in a different way, and you really develop those problem solving skills because you are somewhere that is completely unfamiliar, whether it's, for example, figuring out the transportation in a different country or in another city, or figuring out how to find your way when you don't speak the language, or what the signs or the menu in a restaurant even means. Trying out new things, it all helps you to develop those skills, and that's actually what you can take with you when you go back home again. And it's something that you might not even realize until you actually reflect on it, and you're like, wow, I figured everything out during this trip, and sometimes there were those challenges, but actually it really helps me to look at a problem or an issue from a different perspective.
Great points over there. And so many of us take travel for granted. We don't even realize that all this is happening to us, right? Especially for many of us expats. I think when you become an expat, you also maybe want to travel more, because you've now like learn how to navigate a country, so it's not such a big deal moving or visiting another country, because you've already overcome those challenges. It's a little different because it's short term, and sometimes it's harder when it's short term. For instance, with Japan, I have never done so much research. Like, we travel abroad almost every year, but it's just such a different country. English is not the spoken language. I'm like joining Facebook groups and watching videos, because even it's like in terms of like how do you get from the airport to the Airbnb, which areas are safe to live in. I mean, I think Japan on the whole is safe, but and now because of our conversations, I'm realizing this is pushing me to really problem solve, enhance those skills, think outside the box, because you also have to be creative. You might have all those tips that are shared with you, right, in these Facebook groups or YouTube videos, but finally what's best for you, because again, each family or each person is unique. I'm traveling with my husband and kids, also what will work for us. And the something, maybe I didn't think of it too much, but as my kids have gotten older, we started traveling abroad more, because I feel for them this is an education. I was thinking more only in terms of the countries they're visiting, but now I'm thinking with all that you've shared, that it's also going to enhance their professional, not professional, more like personal growth, but also in terms of problem solving, because sometimes they have to figure out things too, with maybe just the charge of the outlet for the phones, or the kind of food they want to eat in that country, and will this work for me? Will I like it? What should I buy to bring back to the US? So it's all so fascinating. Yeah, what did yeah, I was just looking at, we have a comment here. Yeah, so let's look. Let me show this guy's comment. GMM. He says, I was backpacking for the first time in Southeast Asia in 1994 as an 18-year-old Swede. No internet, no Google Maps, no Translate, no YouTube. It was all unknown with a paper map. Yeah, things have changed. I'm sure being a travel coach then, we would have to have a very different perspective than what you have right now, right, Veerle, in terms of, because even even
Yes,
though I'm not
definitely.
meeting people, yeah, I just think it's interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Did
for
you?
example, when I moved to Spain, there was no WhatsApp yet or no internet. So I can relate to that comment because it really helps you, like talking about problem solving, those experiences. And there's still places, of course, in the world where you won't have internet or where you just have to figure out where to go. So that really helps you because it triggers your mind in a way to look for solutions outside of what's normal to you. Because now at home, maybe you're used to, oh, I don't know the answer to these questions. Let me just find it and search for it on my phone. But then when you're traveling, you might not have those resources available, and it really activates different parts in your mind to find that solution. So it's really powerful also what you mentioned for your kids when you travel with children to expand their horizons as well, because sometimes it's really in those little things that you don't even think about before your trip, that you experience during your travels, and then when you reflect on it later, you're like, wow, this actually really helped me to figure something out. And if you take that with you when you move back, then you can actually use those skills as well to develop even more.
Right, and they may not even realize it now. The kids may not even realize that this is. They're seeing it just like, oh, I'm going to, like, we're going to Japan. I'm going to buy the Kit Kats in the 7-Eleven store. Things that are fairly superficial, but I think it'll have a deeper impact. And sometimes I tell people, I didn't spend money on a private school for my kids. I spend that money on them traveling abroad with us, because I think that is a much bigger education. And as I said, I didn't know about all the other stuff that which you have unpacked about. You're unlocking your potential, but now it's even adding so much more value to us, our travels abroad. So thanks for sharing that. My next question is, how can it boost mindfulness, optimism, and gratitude? I think I never even thought about that. So I'd love for you to share, unpack how travel helps with that.
Yes. So, first of all, I would say that when you travel, you really become more present in the moment. And somehow it happens almost automatically because you really immerse yourself in a new environment, in new surroundings, and you take everything in that happens around you, whether it's the sounds or the smells or like a different language that you hear. Everything just comes in and you absorb it. And that makes you get more into the present moment. And being in the present really helps with mindfulness. That's one of the core parts of it, to really don't think about any distractions. For example, don't look at your phone. Maybe when you're at home you would check your email all the time. And I noticed this, for example, as well myself when I was traveling in Greece last week. I just barely looked at my phone because I was just so immersed in what was going on around me and really taking everything in. And that's the beauty of travel. Wherever you go, especially when you're in nature, it's easier to really focus on that mindfulness aspect, because nature just has this effect on us when we are surrounded by greenery and we just take everything in, the sounds of the birds, for example, or you just see this beautiful waterfall or sunset. You really become immersed in that moment. So that really helps with this mindfulness aspect. And related to that is the optimism as well. Usually, when we travel, we have this anticipation and excitement of what is going to happen. And we're usually more positive about the outcome of our trip. So, for example, at home, we might look at things from a more negative perspective, and we might be thinking, oh, does this work out? Or what is going to happen? But when we travel, what happens often is that we are inclined to think more about the positive outcomes. So we believe that it's going to work out for us. And that shift in your mindset really helps with this feeling of optimism as well. So that's another part of it. And linked to that, you also have gratitude, as you mentioned. And I feel like they're all sort of combined in a way, because when you become more present in the moment, it's also easier to feel grateful for what you experience. And you don't just let things happen to you, but you really focus on what is going on and really immersing yourself in those experiences, whether it's like trying new food, for example, or having like a conversation with a stranger and really asking questions and learning something new about the country you travel to. Like those little moments can really help with that feeling of gratitude and really noticing how grateful or how blessed you are to have those experiences, to be able to see those beautiful places in the world and watch that beautiful sunset, or walk around in this new city and really experience all of that. It can really boost your sense of gratitude as well.
So true. Thank you again for sharing this. Last month actually, we went to Australia. It was my first time in Australia. My husband and two of my kids went because we had a cousin's wedding, and because you spoke about the phones. We did this. I don't know how many miles or kilometers it is. It's along the coast to Manly Bay in Sydney,
Hmm.
and my kids never pulled out their phones because it was such a beautiful walk along the ocean, and these magnificent views of the bay, or the not the bay is in San Francisco, but just the ocean and the cliffs and the greenery. My kids ran most of the way, and they were just, I could see the adrenaline was pumping. They were happy. uh, so I now it just makes so much, and it can happen in the country you live in as well. It doesn't, being out in nature, but it's different because it's always going to be there, right? Where you live. So you may still, I would still take out my phone somewhere. Oh, did someone send me a message? Should I check
Yeah,
my LinkedIn? How many likes did I get on a post? But when you're abroad, that experience is short lived. You might not, I mean, I'd love to go back to Australia, but maybe I won't. And you want to take in all of it. So I can see what you say, living in the present, especially in this world of this of tech and social media. We are always actually living the present, but more on our phones. So beautifully said. And then finally, in terms of how can it help with your personal growth, how can travel abroad help with your personal growth?
yes, I feel like we touched on a few
Right.
aspects of it already, right? For example, the problem solving skills, that's of course part of it, and building your confidence through that. But it's also another part is really expanding your horizons. So it could be, for example, learning the local language or at least a few words. It
Yeah.
could also be really becoming more resilient because you are figuring things out in a new environment, but also having this open mindedness and curiosity to learn and to grow. I feel like when you have that approach, you are more likely to actually boost your personal growth when you travel, because you are really focused on what you mentioned as well, really taking everything in and really experiencing everything you can. And when you have that mindset of, okay, I'm curious, I want to learn more about this culture or this language, or I want to try all the foods. Maybe I don't like it, but at least I've tried, like from traveling from that approach to really taking everything in, it can really boost your personal growth, and it can help you to really step out of your comfort zone. And when you travel, you are already stepping out of your comfort zone in a way, because everything around you is new. But when you get more used to that, it becomes easier to do that as well when you are just in your familiar environment, because you remember those moments when you were traveling that you're like, oh, wow, I did this thing that I never thought I would do, but it was such a great experience. And sometimes when we travel, it's easier to make those decisions. And because we are sort of triggered in a way that everything is new, we're like, oh, okay, let me experience this, even though maybe I would have never thought of doing that. And the more you do those things, the easier it becomes to do that as well when you are like just at home, because you remember those moments and it really builds your confidence as well. So
Yeah,
I would say those are a few of the bigger things for your personal growth. And also what I mentioned before, like the mindfulness, practicing more of being in the present moment. Take that with you as well when you are back home and put your phone away for a moment and just look around. And yeah, what you said as well, there's nature everywhere, so you don't necessarily have to travel far, but see what you can experience already, just maybe in a local park, or just when you walk down the street, and just look around you and see what happens.
Right. No, it's so true. And also, you said in terms of learning the language, trying different foods, talking about foods. We visited the Netherlands 2 years ago, and I wanted to eat authentic Dutch food. Now, I'm noticed in some countries in Europe it's getting harder to find because it's become so multicultural. It's harder to find the local food, but we did find a little hole in the wall place. And then one of the dishes was frikadelle, and I think it had horse meat. He only told us after we ate it. My reaction was like, "Wow, that's pretty cool." I tasted horse meat, and my husband was, "Ooh." So it's just interesting, right? How people react differently to different things. We were in Australia, and I wanted to try kangaroo meat. My husband didn't want to, but like it's just foods and that there all these different foods available. It's also like a learning experience. Like even in terms of the cuisines. And how they're linked culturally to the country, like in the U.S., kangaroo meat might be frowned upon because we see kangaroos as these exotic creatures, but in Australia, they're all over, and it's part of the staple diet. It may not be part of the staple diet, but it's not a big deal. And those are things that you also realize, and it's just fascinating with food, language, and everything. And I could talk forever to you about travel and how it informs us. And I had a very quick question before we have you share a little bit more about. So, in terms of people who are afraid to travel, right? There are people maybe who are watching this. Now there's some. I know travel can be expensive, but I know people who travel on a budget. They figure out like really cheap flights, really like hostels and stuff. So it is possible if you put your mind to it. But I'm not really going to talk about the expenses here. I'm going to talk about people who might have the means, can afford it, but they are afraid to travel. So what would you say to those people? And is that something you also do as a travel coach, help people get over the mindset, or develop the mindset and the confidence and courage to travel abroad?
Yes, definitely. If I would have a session with someone with that type of question, I would really focus on, okay, what is actually underlying this fear? Where is the fear coming from? And then finding ways to overcome it so that someone can actually take the step and travel. Because it's such a shame if you have this desire to travel, but then you hold yourself back because of the fear. So really finding ways to realize, okay, where is this fear coming from? Is it real, or is this something that is just constructed in my mind? And finding ways to let go of that and then really take the step. And sometimes, depending on the situation, it's also about building confidence with small steps. So, for example, if traveling abroad feels like a step too far, still too scary, why don't you just start with a weekend away or a day away in your own country? And for example, when it comes to solo travel, people are often quite scared to take that step for the first time. So that's one thing I sometimes recommend. Like, okay, just why not try one night away in another city in your own country? Just, it sounds maybe silly, but it's just to take a little step, because often it's about taking the first step, which feels like the biggest one. So if you make that first step very small, then you get into that momentum and in action mode, and then you're like, oh, okay, I can do this. This is actually not as scary as I thought it would be. And then it becomes much easier to take the next step and take the next, and before you know, you book that ticket and you go for it, right?
Right.
But it's also, yeah, if I would really have the time to work with someone on their fears and to really go to the root causes of it, then that's definitely something I would dive into with someone and make sure that they're not holding themselves back, and that they can really enjoy their travels.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Actually, I do have two more quick questions. One is, what about if you have a bad experience when you travel? For instance, we went to Switzerland last year, and the perceptions, right? I thought Switzerland is it's a wealthy country. It's very safe. So I have one Chanel bag, and I took out the Chanel bag for my Swiss trip, and I put my purse in there, and then we were getting on a train from Switzerland to Germany, and my wallet got stolen. Someone just pulled it out, and I didn't know because everyone was rushing. So it did, I was on such a high. Switzerland, so beautiful. You've talked about nature, just, gorgeous. I, so how, and if you've had a bad experience in a country, how can you, reverse it? Because you then start seeing everything negatively. Luckily for me, I am a fairly positive person. Once I got over losing all that money and credit cards, I was able to dwell on the good times I had in Switzerland, but may not always be the case for someone. So, do you have a quick tip on if something like that happens where you have a negative experience? What can people do? Or can they do anything? Or any, yeah.
Yeah, no, you can definitely do something. And I feel like in the moment, of course, really feeling that what happened really sucks, I think that's a good place to start. Sometimes we try to just push it away and be like, oh, okay, it happened. But it's good to just go through the motions and really feel it. But then afterwards, also to focus on, okay, but what you actually mentioned as well, that's a great approach. Like, what are all the good things that happened during this trip? Because this small thing, well, it's of course, in your example, it's quite a big thing, of course, but don't let it ruin your whole experience, because that could have happened in any country, so it doesn't define your whole experience in that specific country. So if you have troubles with sort of getting out of that negative experience, really even writing down all the positive experiences you have had, and you just have this whole list. Here you have one negative thing, and then you have a whole list of positive experiences. And then when you look at it like that, you see like, okay, not my whole trip was a bad experience. It was just this tiny thing. And I can feel bad about it for a moment, but I can also just try to let go of that feeling and focus on all the positive things that happened as well. And that can be a way to shift your mindset and to not dwell on it for too long and not let it ruin like the rest of your travels.
Right, beautiful. Great tip there. And finally, in terms of a country that has unlocked your potential, because I know you've traveled a lot, you've lived abroad. Is there one country where you felt took your unlocking your potential to the next level? What was it that created that? Did that happen to you? Do you feel?
Yes, I feel it happened to me multiple times. And I think especially the places that I have lived in for a longer time. So I feel like Spain, what I started with in the beginning of our conversation as well, it really unlocked this desire to live in different places, to learn languages. Because when I moved there, I was very young and I didn't speak the language. I was brand new to living abroad and being on my own. So that really gave me the confidence as well to realize, okay, I can actually build a life somewhere new where I don't know anyone, where I don't speak the language, where I have to figure everything out by myself, and I can make it work. So that really built the confidence and made me realize that I could do that again. So that helped me actually in my solo travels afterwards, but also in my further moves abroad. And I feel that my last move in like living in Australia also really helped me unlock my potential even further, because that was sort of more like a professional part of my journey in which I really built my career, and working in an international environment helped me build my skills as well. And it's a completely different skill set that you build. And I feel like that really helps me now in my business as well, just to have that international experience of working in another language, of also, yeah, building your life somewhere new. I think, yeah, everyone like who has lived abroad can relate to that. You really grow in so many aspects of your life, adjusting to a different culture. So I feel like all of those experiences together really help me to unlock more of my potential. And of course, it's a journey in itself, and I'm still growing every day, figuring things out. But looking back and reflecting on those experiences, I can really see how it helped me become the person that I am today, and how it can still help me to grow even more in the future.
Very, really good, true, very true about that. So, in terms of how can people connect with you, how can they find you, how can they work with you? I know you'll also share the links in the comments of the YouTube channel and on LinkedIn where it's streaming. But maybe also just if you can briefly tell people uh, before we end this interview.
Yes, sure. So you can find me on basically all social media channels, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all under the name of Unpack by Veer. And that's also the name of my website, unpackbyveer.com. And yeah, if someone is interested in knowing more about how I can help with, with your travels or with your move abroad, or whether you're living abroad already and would like some support, you can always schedule a free discovery call with me to have a chat to see what you're looking for, what type of support you need, and yeah, if I can help you with that. So that's always an option as well. You can always reach out to me, and then we just go from there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Veerle, for being on the show with me. I could talk forever. As I said, I love travel. And I actually wanted to add, because now I'm kind of, the US is my base. I've been here for 21 years. For me, I'm experiencing, I would say, like micro expat life when I travel abroad. So it's also like, even though maybe I'm there for a week or a few days, it's still like, I'm experiencing expat life. So I wanted to just add that you can also see it from the perspective of being a very, very short term expat. Yeah, so thank you for joining us. Thank you for everyone who's joined us in the audience, Natalia, GM, and anyone else who's watching this live or in the replay. And I will see you next Tuesday. Again, we'll be talking about global diversity and inclusion with another, actually, founding member of the Expat Woman, just like Veerle here is. So bye, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day.